Amazon started as a bookstore, not a technology company, not a logistics empire, not a cloud computing giant. A bookstore run out of a garage in Bellevue, Washington, by a former Wall Street analyst who quit his job, drove across the country, and wrote his business plan in the passenger seat. Today, Amazon is one of the most valuable companies in human history. It controls roughly 40% of all American e-commerce. Its cloud computing division, AWS, powers a significant portion of the entire internet, including Netflix, Airbnb, and the CIA. It sells groceries, makes films and television, manufactures home security devices, operates one of the world's largest logistics networks, and runs a pharmaceutical business. Every single time Amazon entered a new industry, the companies already in that industry said the same thing. Amazon has no experience here. They don't understand our business. They will fail. Every single time Amazon won. This is not a story about luck. It's the story of one of the most deliberately constructed business strategies in corporate history, and why it works when almost no one else can replicate it. Jeff Bezos founded Amazon in 1994 after identifying what he called the everything store opportunity, a business that could sell any product to any customer anywhere in the world, using the internet as its distribution channel. He chose books as the starting point, not because he loved books, though he did, but because books were the ideal first product for proving the concept. There were over 3 million books in print at any given time. No physical store could stock more than a fraction of that. An online store with no physical inventory constraints could offer all of them. The unit economics were manageable, returns were low, and books were a product that almost everyone bought at least occasionally. But from the very beginning, Bezos was clear, internally, if not always publicly, that Amazon was not a bookstore. It was an experiment in using technology to remove friction from commerce. Every decision Amazon made in its early years was designed to prove and extend that thesis. One-click purchasing, customer reviews, personalized recommendations. These weren't features, they were investments in understanding how to make buying things easier than it had ever been before. Amazon went public in 1997, despite being deeply unprofitable. In his first letter to shareholders that year, Bezos wrote something that would define the company's strategy for the next 3 decades. It is all about the long term. While most public companies managed their businesses to maximize quarterly earnings, Amazon would manage its business to maximize long-term value, accepting losses, even enormous ones, in the present in exchange for competitive advantages that would compound over time. Wall Street hated it. Analysts criticized Amazon for years as a company that couldn't turn a profit. Bezos, almost entirely indifferent to short-term criticism, kept reinvesting every dollar the business generated back into expansion. The pattern that followed: enter a new market, lose money aggressively while building infrastructure, eventually dominate, would repeat itself across every major Amazon business for the next 25 years. To understand why Amazon's expansion strategy works when almost no competitor can replicate it, you need to understand a concept that Bezos sketched on a napkin in the early 2000s, what Amazon internally called the flywheel. The flywheel worked like this: lower prices attracted more customers. More customers attracted more third-party sellers to Amazon's marketplace. More sellers meant more selection. More selection brought more customers. More customers gave Amazon the scale to lower prices further. Each element of the loop reinforced every other element. The flywheel, once spinning, became increasingly difficult to stop, and increasingly difficult for any competitor to replicate from a standing start, because they would need to build every element of the loop simultaneously. Amazon Prime, launched in 2005, was the flywheel's most powerful accelerant. For a flat annual fee, customers received free 2-day shipping on millions of items. The economics looked terrible on paper. Amazon was subsidizing shipping costs that often exceeded the membership fee. But Prime did something more important than make money directly. It changed customer behavior. Prime members bought more frequently, spent more per transaction, and were dramatically less likely to comparison shop on other platforms. Once a customer was paying for Prime, leaving Amazon meant leaving money on the table. By 2023, Amazon Prime had over 200 million subscribers worldwide. Amazon Web Services, launched in 2006, followed a similar logic, but in an entirely different market. Amazon had built enormous server infrastructure to run its own e-commerce business. Bezos recognized that other companies needed the same infrastructure, and that Amazon could rent access to it at a profit. AWS began as an internal tool. It became the foundation of the modern internet. Today, AWS generates more operating profit than Amazon's entire retail business. It is, in financial terms, the engine that funds everything else Amazon does. By the 2010s, Amazon had proven its model in e-commerce and cloud computing. What followed was an expansion into industries that, on the surface, seemed to have nothing to do with selling books online. In 2014, Amazon launched the Echo, a voice-activated home speaker powered by an AI assistant called Alexa. It created an entirely new product category and gave Amazon a physical presence in customers' homes for the first time. In 2017, Amazon acquired Whole Foods for $13.7 billion, its largest acquisition at the time, giving it instant access to physical retail locations, a premium grocery brand, and a network of potential last-mile delivery hubs. In 2018, Amazon entered the pharmacy business, eventually acquiring PillPack and launching Amazon Pharmacy, directly competing with CVS and Walgreens. Amazon Studios began producing original films and television content, winning Academy Awards and competing directly with Netflix and HBO for subscribers and talent. In every case, the reaction from incumbent industries followed the same pattern: skepticism, then concern, then panic. Pharmacy executives dismissed Amazon's entry into their market until Amazon Pharmacy launched, with prices significantly below traditional pharmacies. Grocery executives dismissed the Whole Foods acquisition until Amazon began integrating Prime discounts and 2-hour delivery that no traditional grocer could match. The pattern works because Amazon brings 3 things to every new market it enters: an existing customer relationship with hundreds of millions of people, a logistics and technology infrastructure that took decades and hundreds of billions of dollars to build, and a willingness to lose money for longer than any competitor can sustain fighting them. That combination is, for most industries, close to impossible to defend against. Amazon's story is unusual in this series because it isn't a story about failure. It's a story about a strategy so counterintuitive that almost nobody believed it would work, executed so consistently over so long a period that it reshaped the entire global economy. The core insight behind everything Amazon has done is disarmingly simple. If you can make customers trust you completely, trust that you have what they want, that it will arrive when you say it will, that returning it will be painless, they will buy from you first, every time, without comparison shopping. Building that trust required years of losses, enormous infrastructure investment, and a willingness to be misunderstood by Wall Street for over a decade. Most companies, and most leaders, find that kind of patience impossible. Quarterly earnings reports, shareholder pressure, and short-term incentive structures make it almost structurally impossible for a public company to accept losses today in exchange for competitive advantages that might not materialize for 5 or 10 years. Bezos structured Amazon to resist those pressures in ways that were unusual for a public company, maintaining voting control, writing annual shareholder letters that explicitly warned investors not to expect short-term profits, and repeatedly making investments that analysts criticized and that paid off years later. The question Amazon's story raises and doesn't fully answer is whether the strategy is replicable or whether it required a specific combination of founder, moment, and market that is unlikely to recur. Every company that has tried to copy Amazon's long-term, invest aggressively, accept losses approach has found it significantly harder than it looks from the outside, which suggests that the strategy itself is only part of what made Amazon work. Jeff Bezos stepped down as Amazon's CEO in 2021, transitioning to executive chairman. Andy Jassy, who had built AWS from its earliest days, took over as CEO. Amazon's market capitalization has exceeded $1 trillion multiple times. The company Bezos started in a garage, writing his business plan in the passenger seat of a car, is now one of the largest employers on Earth. The garage in Bellevue, where Amazon began, is still standing. It was designated a landmark by the city of Bellevue in 2022. If you want to understand the strategies behind the world's most extraordinary corporate rises and falls, subscribe. There's a new one every week. And if today's story made you want to understand how Bezos built Amazon from the inside, I've linked a book in the description, The Everything Store by Brad Stone. It's the most comprehensive account of Amazon's history ever written, and it's as close to the full story as you're likely to find. Link is below.